Hello and welcome to yet another intriguing episode of Hype Season 6, How You Got Placed Season 6, Uthan's flagship interview series event. And today we have special guests Anirudh Gautam sir and Aaryak Shah sir. So let us know more about them sir. आप अपने बारे में थोड़ा introduce कर दीजिए so that our viewers know more about you.
Hi everyone, my name is Anirudh Gautam. I'm currently a final year student from IMG batch. Last summer, I completed my internship at Google India. Prior to that, I have done few internships at startups in the field of data science, and right now I hold a full-time offer from Google India.
Hi everyone, my name is Aaryak. I am a final year student from the IIT batch. Last summer I interned at D-Shop and I recently received a big gift from them.
सर सीधे मुद्दे पे आते हैं हम आईटी वालों को या फिर कोई भी टेक वालों को बहुत सारी पूल ऑफ अपॉर्चुनिटीज होती है यहाँ जाए वहाँ जाए यहाँ जाए लेकिन आपको कैसे पता चले कि यहाँ यस गूगल की समर इंटर्न है या आपको कैसे पता चले कि डी शॉ की समर इंटर्न है एंड हाउ डिड यू अप्रोच देम?
Okay, so I'll talk about my experience. So I started applying for these opportunities in the beginning of my final year itself. For Google, they opened these applications for summer internships on their career portal. So first, I took a referral and applied. Right? After 1 month, I didn't hear anything back from them. So I reached out to a few recruiters. I basically sent a cold email with my resume and like a short description about myself, and I just told them that I'm looking for an internship for so and so position. And the very next day, I got my interview scheduled. I think after 2 weeks, I had both of my interviews. So for internships, they usually take around 2 interviews for 45 minutes, both DSA based. After this, so all this was happening in the last week of August. So I reached out to a recruiter in the last week of August. Then after 2 weeks, I got my interview scheduled, and around mid of September, I got the results. So this was my process.
So for me, unlike with Anirudh, right, I came across this opportunity as an on-campus offer. So around our third year summer, the end of the third year during the summer vacation, basically companies were starting to come for internships and placements, and D-Shop happened to be one of the first companies to arrive on campus. I think we approached it quite casually in the beginning because we weren't sure if we were prepared enough for a big company like this. So we just sort of gave it just to test how far we are in our own preparation, and as luck would have it, I ended up getting selected for an interview. So until that point, I was almost confident that I was not going to get an internship out of this. But the moment the interview list came up, I think I ended up getting very serious about it. And luckily, we were given an entire week to prepare for the interview. And during that time, I basically went through everything I could as fast as I could. Primarily, a lot of core concepts such as OOPs, operating systems, and computer networks. There's a lot of YouTube crash courses on these things, so I basically went through all of those, and I very thoroughly went through my own resume projects. That helped me out a lot. So for 1 week, that was my preparation, and then we had 2 technical interviews that went really well, and after that I got the internship.
I guess we are never really prepared of कि हमें कभी करना होता है.
That's true. Sometimes the opportunity just surprises you.
And this takes like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, from the moment you get those opportunities to you finally receiving the offer.
अनुज सर आपने कुछ टर्म्स बोले थे कोल्ड ईमेल्स. So what are those cold emails? How they benefit any person who has to get a job?
Right. So see, when you start looking for any internships or placements, right, you are basically shooting your arrows in every direction. You are trying everything. So the first thing you do is you simply apply on your career portal. companies come up with these applications, you simply fill the form. So that's the number one step. The second best thing that you can do is you can ask for reference. So you can reach out to people who are actually working in the company and ask them to refer you. So then there's like a third way, which is a little bit difficult, but which is basically to send out mails to people who are directly involved in the recruiting process. So for big companies, these are the recruiters. For smaller companies, these can be engineers, founding engineers, senior manager, even founders themselves. So you directly reach out to them. So this is called cold email because they don't know you, right? You just have their email and you just basically it's a sales pitch about you, right? So you just send them mails. You send a lot of people mails about what you are looking for, who are you. Just tell about your previous works, your previous experience, and whatever. So yeah, so this is like the third step of looking for internships and placements. Are difficult, tedious because you have to find emails, you have to write those emails as well, and people usually write out, use a lot of Gen AI tools as well for this. But then you can customize it as well for different roles for different companies. So yeah, it's tedious, but it's rewarding. At least it was in my case.
So basically you're spying in their account and just when luck and attention strikes, you get the opportunity.
Honestly, I don't think spamming is the right word because of course we are looking for internships or placements, but they are also looking for candidates, right? So I mean, if you are the right fit, you kind of making their job is easier as well because they also want to recruit the right people as soon as possible. So if you are the right candidate, I mean, they won't mind those extra emails.
To be honest, so next question is for both of you कि आपने दोनों ने resume board use किया and very put a thorough emphasis on it. So to juniors या फिर like me being a second year person, मुझे डाउट होता है या फिर किसी भी टेक में डाउट होता है कि एक अच्छा रेज्यूमे कैसे बनाए एंड व्हाट इंपॉर्टेंस डज द रेज्यूमे होल्ड इन प्लेसमेंट्स.
Okay, so quite simply, resume is like a very brief but very precise description of who you are as an employee or who you are going to be as an employee, right? So it is like your summary, right? So what you need to achieve with the resume is sort of describing yourself in a way that fits into what the company wants, right? So if you imagine it's like a puzzle piece, right? The company has probably in the job description or through other means, like you can figure out what the company wants out of an employee that they're trying to hire, and your resume needs to fit into that specific hole, right? So generally you rely on a lot of keywords that are often you find them from the job description itself. Like if they're looking for specific languages, if they're looking for specific skill sets, you go with that. Additionally, obviously you should know these things before you. If you don't know a skill, don't put it on the resume. It doesn't help. But if you know the skill and if it's worded in a very specific way in the job description, try to match that. Like it improves your chances. And obviously you put in your past experience. Past experience is quite important because it tells an employer that this guy has worked in a company before, which means he was considered employable, which means he is still possibly considered employable. If you don't have a past employment record or an internship record or anything, then it becomes a slightly more doubtful. Now I didn't have any past experience to put on it, but what I did have instead were very good personal projects. So that is another thing that you can add there. And the benefit of that is you are showcasing that you actually know how to use the technologies that you have listed, right? So if I mention a few skills and then I don't give any proof that I know how to use those skills, then there is no point to it. So I list these technologies and skills and then I show that I can use them in the projects that I've added. That also helps the recruiters understand your level of understanding and capabilities, and that will also help you manage.
So एक मेरा भी पर्सनल ये रह चुका है कि many companies use a keyword based approach to shortlist resumes. So how do we tackle them and what should be approach कि आपने बोला कि keywords हम use करते हैं resume build करने के लिए. तो हर एक कंपनी के लिए पर्सनलाइज्ड रेज्यूमे बनाना चाहिए, या फिर यू मेक अ जनरल रेज्यूमे एंड लाइक गिव इट टू ऑल कंपनीज?
आई मीन मैंने कभी ऐसा कोई रिगरस स्टडी नहीं देखा इस पे कि किसी ने फिगर आउट किया वो बेस्ट अप्रोच क्या है, बट इफ़ यू हैव द टाइम टू लाइक कस्टमाइज योर रेज्यूमे फॉर एवरी कंपनी यू आर अप्लाइंग टू, देन दैट्स फाइन. बट जनरली जॉब हंटिंग के टाइम पे तुम इतने सारे कंपनीज में अप्लाई कर रहे होगे दैट यू जस्ट वोंट हैव द टाइम टू डू दैट. सो समटाइम्स यू हैव टू यूज लाइक कैच ऑल टर्म्स फॉर एवरीथिंग कि majority companies cover हो जाए, right? Once again, as long as you know certain technologies, it's more or less the same keywords across all companies. Like technology के names तो change होंगे नहीं, right? So if you know a technology, you've written that in your resume, जो company use करती है वो technology को match कर लेगी. So
इसमें एक और पॉइंट है कि फॉर एग्जांपल इफ़ यू नो कि कोई कंपनी है वो सर्टेन चीज़ों को देखती है एक रेज्यूमे में, एंड यू कैन नो दिस यू नो फ्रॉम द पीपल हु आर वर्किंग देयर और योर सीनियर्स. इफ यू हैव दिस इन्फॉर्मेशन देन लाइक यू शुड ट्राई टू कस्टमाइज. फॉर एग्जांपल देयर आर सर्टेन कंपनीज जो जिनका प्योरली डीएसए बेस्ड इंटरव्यूज होते हैं. सो नाउ दे एक्सपेक्ट यू टू हैव सम सॉर्ट ऑफ लाइक अगर तुम्हारे रेज्यूमे में वो सेक्शन ही नहीं है जो बताता है कि तुम्हें डीएसए आता है, so probably shortlisting होने के chances कम हो जाते हैं. So if you have that information कि यार ये जो कंपनी है pure DSA based rounds लेती है, so you know sometimes the recruiters also screen your email, your resume beforehand. So if you don't have any profile links or if you don't showing any achievement ranks in your contest, अगर वो क्लिक हो जाता है एक बार में कि यार उसने इतने सारे कॉन्टेस्ट दिए हैं उसमें इतने रैंक्स आए हैं, वो उनको पता है कि उनका इंटरव्यू DSA बेस्ड होने वाला है, तो वो इमीडिएटली फिर शॉर्टलिस्ट भी कर देते हैं. So if you have this information, again कैसे मिलेंगी सीनियर्स TDS है, but है information तो कस्टमाइज करें.
सर तो अभी कुछ DSA बेस के लिए कुछ लोग अभी आपने प्रोजेक्ट का मेंशन किया, तो DSA बेस जो प्योरली DSA फोकस करते हैं उनको यही कमी रहती है कि हम प्रोजेक्ट्स क्या बनाएं, एंड मोस्ट प्रोबेबली यहाँ पे डेवलपमेंट वाले फील्ड वाले वो यहाँ पे आगे रहते हैं इस पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से. So, what would you suggest purely those who are purely focusing on DSA?
Yeah, this is like classic DSA versus dev वाला चीज़. See, मतलब ये डिबेट ही गलत है स्टार्टिंग में. Like you should do both. सब कहते हैं नो, बट इट्स लाइक कि सबको पसंद एक टाइम पे कुछ हो जाता है एंड देन फिर इट्स लाइक यू नो कि अदर चीज़ को अटेंशन उतना ही दे पाते हैं. But like I think from the first year itself, you should try to be good in both DSA and Dev, because it simply just increase the number of opportunities that you can apply to. And so even if let's say you are good in DSA, and there are these big tech companies, right? They just care about whether you can solve these data structures algorithms problems or not, right? But even if let's say you're going for internship, right? For those 12 weeks and 10 weeks, whatever is the internship duration, you have to actually develop something. And वहाँ पे जाके if you are learning what is version control, and similarly आप सोच सकते हो कि there are your peers जिनको पता है ये चीज़, they have some sort of development experience beforehand, तो वो उनको फिर आपका advantage हो जाता है, because in a company you are already learning things that are specific to that company. उनके personal खुद के stack होते हैं, उनकी खुद की technologies होती हैं, so you also have to learn that, and आपको dev experience है तो फिर वो cover up करना पड़ता है. So even if let's say you are just good in DSA, फिर वहाँ पे प्रॉब्लम आती है. So from the beginning itself you should try to cover both the things.
Yeah, I think more or less मेरे point same है Anirudh जैसे. I think what you really need is adaptability, right? Every company is going to have different procedures for hiring candidates, and as he said, there are some companies that rely only on DSA, for example Google, and then there are some companies that have like a mix of things. कुछ राउंड में DSA पूछेंगे, कुछ राउंड में they will ask like dev questions, sometimes it will be system design, it can be really anything, right? So what you need is adaptability. You should have the capability of learning new things fast enough that you can adapt to interviewing for a different company, right? And for that what you need is a good base of knowledge. So if while you are in your earlier years, like first, second year especially, generally if you explore everything, right? You explore a bit of DSA, you explore a bit of development, you explore a bit of system design, a bit of blockchain, whatever fields that you find interesting, maybe ML, maybe could be data science, whatever, right? If you have explored a lot of these fields and gotten like the basic knowledge required to understand any of those fields, then it becomes easier in the future to quickly learn the more advanced concepts, no matter which stream you have to choose for whichever company it is, right? Obviously, you would be better at some things as opposed to others. For example, I am far better in development than I am at DSA. So I tend to focus my time on honing my dev skills, and I generally ignore DSA because I know that if I apply for another company at any point in time, I will probably be looking for the ones that hire based on my dev skills, right? But not everyone has the flexibility to, pick and choose where to apply. So it's better to have that adaptability ingrained into your education from the beginning. That helps, I think.
So generally लोग ये करते हैं कि they will keep on focusing on one thing and make it, they will excel in it, be it DSA or development. Instead, what we learn is we should be adaptive and basically an all-rounder team. दोनों भी
I wouldn't say exactly an all-rounder. Like you still have to focus on one thing. Ultimately, you need to be good at least one thing. You can't be a jack of all trades and master of none, because if you want a really good placement, then that's not the way to approach it, right? Like if you have a dream company, let's say your dream company is Google, and you want to get into it at some point, you have to be good at DSA, right? So you can't just like do everything to some extent, but
don't completely neglect the.
You can't completely neglect everything else. So you pick one thing to be good at, but you ensure that you have enough knowledge about other things that are even remotely related to what you are good at. Because ultimately that's what will help, right? Experience in one field and a general knowledge of other fields is a good way to go.
So Anirudh sir, you have worked in past many internships. So how did these help you land your job in Google?
So I've basically done two internships in the past in startups maybe. So I don't think it's a direct correlation with landing a job at Google, but those internships basically like have their own share in like your personal development as well. So I don't think there's a direct dependence, but yeah, you basically learn a lot. So those internships were my first experience. So again, I got those opportunities through my network. One of my friends was applying in those companies, and basically, in a normal discussion they shared. So I also applied, and they had a very interesting hiring process as well. So they first give you an assignment, you solve it. Once you solve it, they will schedule an interview for you, and in that interview, they'll give you another assignment, and then they do this process like around 2 to 3 times, and then finally they give you an offer. Right? So you basically, yeah. So that was my first corporate experience. Although all this was happening during the COVID time, so it was all work from home. So yeah, again, no direct correlation, but yeah, every internship, everything that you do will teach you something.
So Anirudh sir, you got your internship off campus, and Aaryak sir, you got your internship on campus. So can you compare between these? How different were your experiences?
Right. So I think the number one difference is, so see, there are two parts, right? Number one is how you like get those opportunities to sit for interviews, and second is clearing those interviews. And this is kind of true for most of the companies, that it's difficult to get to the final interviews, then to clear those. And how you approach it, like the way you approach like to those opportunities is, I think, the main difference between on campus and off campus. The interview part, like once you have those interviews scheduled, how, like what sort of questions they'll ask, what's the pattern, like it kind of remains the same. Now for off campus, basically you need to try everything. As in, so I already discussed, like, for example, the first step is always to apply on the career portal. The second thing that you can do is to ask for reference, and the third thing is to make you like directly approach the people who are in the decision making process, and this depends on the size of the company. So if it's an early startup, most of the times founders or senior engineers, these are involved in the hiring process, so you can directly reach out to them. If it's a big company, these recruiters, talent engagement team, these are into picture, so you can reach out to them as well. So in off-campus, basically, it's very tedious because you have to throw darts in every direction, try every possible things, and make yourself visible to these people who are actually hiring. Although I think for on-campus, it's mainly your batch and your GPA that plays a role in getting shortlisted. So,
I mean, in general, I would say it is easier to land a job on campus or an internship, whatever it is. I think there are a few key differences. For example, referrals don't work on campus, right? When they come on campus, they are only looking at this small group of people, and they are not going to be taking a referral from some employee ever. So you have to really prove yourself in the tests to ensure that you land the internship. Additionally, yeah, as I said, GPA matters a lot. So if you have a better GPA, it's easier to get shortlisted, especially when it gets used as a tiebreaker often. So that helps a lot. And yeah, other than that, it's generally easier. Like it's easier to sort of prepare for on-campus opportunities just because you know exactly how many people are appearing and how much you need to study to sort of pass, exceed the cutoff, so to speak.
And these days, off-campus opportunities are becoming more difficult.
Yeah,
Because there are so many candidates, and also there are so many Telegram groups and LinkedIn, and there are a lot of even startups also that they are sharing links of these opportunities. So the moment the opening comes, it's everywhere. So on the same day, thousands of people apply.
You need to be the fastest at information gathering
Yeah.
if you're applying off campus. जितना जल्दी तुम अपॉर्चुनिटी ढूंढोगे दूसरों के पहले, हायर द चांसेस कि तुम्हें उसमें एंट्री मिल जाएगी उस अपॉर्चुनिटी में.
And just a random question. Many of us scroll through LinkedIn and see a post there. Just drop interested if you want to apply at this post in this role. Is it really worth it, or it's just
Those things hardly works.
They generally, yeah, it really depends. So sometimes some companies have internal openings that aren't a proper job role publicly posted. But let's say there is some team, somebody just left the company and there's an opening for a short period of time, maybe just a singular opening. Sometimes they do these informal hiring things where they just put a post on LinkedIn, get some interested people, sort through their profiles and find a fitting candidate. But yeah, most of the times these don't.
But see,
LinkedIn has a job board.
Even that has a job. They can also add a Google Form link, right? To make the life easier, rather than scrolling through all these things.
I think they do it on LinkedIn just because there's you can just click on the profile and see everything about them. But it's not always a real opportunity.
how do we deal with innocent people like us? How do we stay away from these and save our time?
I mean, they are not hurting you, right?
It's not really a waste of time to just type interested. It takes about 5 seconds. Just do it. If it lands you an opportunity, sure. If it doesn't, then move on. I mean, as he said, you have to throw your darts everywhere, right? You have to be very lenient with your opportunity finding. If you're getting something, go for it, right? Especially in this market.
Although the person is, it has multiple posts like this, right? So most likely you go, just followers gather and so you can also check the profile.
Yeah. If you really want to be smart about it, it's not that hard to figure out what's what. If it's an HR at a company, for example, if you look through the profile, it's an HR at a legitimate company, then try it.
If it's an HR, they probably use the LinkedIn job boards, right? And they directly reach out to
Not
candidates.
always, not always. Sometimes they just directly put a post. But Ideally, if you're on LinkedIn and looking for jobs, just use the jobs code. They have a separate like tab for that. Just use that. Works better.
So speaking about opportunities, you both have successfully converted your internship into BPOs and back into jobs and back BPOs. So, like, how much effort does it take, or may I frame myself, what approach do we follow to convert these internships into BPOs?
So, see, there are few basic things, right? It's like you should try to maintain good communication with all the people who are involved, your manager, your host. You should also actively try to find out more about your project, like what sort of expectations your manager and your company have from this project. Then also you can continue to log all your work that you are doing on a daily basis, because towards the end of internship you need to write a review, a self-review, what things went well and what it didn't. So you need all those pointers, all the things that you worked on. So just maintain a work log. So these are the few things that in fact everyone should take into consideration. But few things I observed during my internship is that number one is, I think actively seeking feedback is very important. So this happened with few of my friends. They thought that their internship was going really well, but in the mid-eval, basically it happens exactly the mid of your internship. So if your internship is, let's say, for 12 weeks, in the 6th week you will have your mid-eval, right? In which basically you and your manager will share feedback with each other. So in that feedback, right, they got surprised from the manager, right? They got, there are certain scopes in which their manager expected them to improve, and it was a surprise to them because they thought that everything was going well. So yeah, I think you should kind of skip these surprises, and you usually have these one-on-ones with your manager. So just end of it, maybe just ask if there's anything that you can improve, or if there's anything that you need to work on, because as if you like see these feedbacks actively, you have more time to work on these shortcomings. So I think that is also very important. And one more thing, so there are two things, right? Number one is collaboration. Basically, if I'm, let's say, stuck, I'm reaching out to you for help. And the second thing is independence. That if I am stuck, can I solve it on my own? So I think people should try to maintain a good balance between these two. Let's say if I'm reaching out to you for the problems whose answers is just a search away, right? So this is not an ideal case, right? Because you have to context switch, you are working on something else, and so basically that shouldn't be the case. So try to maintain a good balance between these two. Be an active collaborator, because certain times there are things that will not be documented but will be in the company's knowledge, in the company's context. So only the people who are working there knows about it. And so the only way to know it, is by talking to two different people's, talking about those problems. But at the same time, you should be able to approach those problems independently. So this balancing these two things also is very important.
I would say, okay, so naturally every company has a very different approach to evaluating your internship performance, right? But very broadly, at least based on my experience, I would break it down into like 3 components. Ultimately, you have to show that you have a certain set of skills that are useful to the company, and thus they should hire you. So I would divide them into like 3 categories. One is obviously technical, one is a social component, and I would say a sort of managerial component. So technically, you should showcase that you have the technical know-how of the like programming languages and other technologies being used, and also a general like higher level understanding of how the technical systems actually work and how they interact with each other, right? So that goes into your like system design and those sorts of concepts. Obviously, your project completion is the biggest indicator that you have a technical know-how. Right? If you can finish the allotted work in the allotted time, always a good thing. Socially, as he said, communication is very important, right? People will be judging you throughout your internship, especially your mentor and manager. And the more you communicate with them, not just about your problems, but just in general, right? You just casually just report to them about how your project is going, right? What difficulties you are facing, maybe you discovered something new, maybe you discovered some sort of interesting work in there, like in the existing technology that like you are able to talk about. There's a lot of things that you will learn, like a lot of new things that you'll come across that are great talking points, and just communicating is a great way to, keep your name in their mind. Like if they know you, if they know that you're working, and if they know that you're working well, they're more likely to hire you. So communicating is always going to be key, right? And I would say a managerial component is there, like how well can you manage your time and your project, because an internship is a very short thing, right? Especially a summer internship, for example, I only had 2 months to do an entire project from scratch. So one thing they do, like evaluate you on, is how well you are managing your time. There is a lot of things that go on, like there is something called requirements gathering, right? If you have a project, that project is going to be used by someone. How are they going to use it? What do they need my project for? There's a lot of things that you need to understand about it before you actually start working on it. How effectively you are able to do these things, and how effectively you are able to like manage your time between other company activities, doing your project work, going to meetings, stuff like that. They evaluate you on that as well, and as long as you're like decently efficient at it, that is also a pretty good look on your final this thing. And yeah, ultimately, at least for me, we had a final presentation at the end with like very high level managers in the company, and yeah, they sort of have their own ways of like judging you on the spot, obviously, and as long as you can make them happy in that presentation, it needs to be like the perfect pitch and in that moment, because the managers who look at your work, they may or may not have like an in-depth technical knowledge of your project specifically, right? Your project is going to be completely new to them during the presentation, so you kind of have to sell your work to them, right? You have to sell them on the idea that your work is useful to the company, whatever was given to you. And if you can do that, then I think it's almost certain that you get a review out of your internship.
So just to add, so again there are two components. One thing, so you can do all these things, but there's again a still uncertain factor is your business requirement.
Yeah,
so that's always a dicey case. So even if let's say you can do everything right, and it's still possible that you won't end up getting.
I'm describing the thing that you have control.
Yeah, ultimately manager को खुश करता है.
Ultimately खुश करना.
See, not only managers.
Company के requirements होते हैं. Like there is a headcount requirement, there is budget requirements, all sorts of considerations that go in at a higher managerial level that is outside of your control.
Yeah.
And if something happens there that results in your unemployment, then that's an unfortunate case, but you can't do anything about it. But nonetheless, you at least have to maximize the variables you have control over, and I think those are these three components that you talked about. Anything else?
The only thing is also कि like you should at least know कि conversions process like उस company में work कैसे करता है, like stakeholders कौन. So for example, like Aaryak talked about a presentation, right, which played a huge role उसके journey में. But so for example, in my case, the stakeholders were mainly host and co-host, and their feedback carries the maximum weightage. So you should know कि company में stakeholders कौन है, who will be finally evaluating you, कौन से dimensions में. And most of the companies are sometimes very good. So for example, in my case, from the beginning of the internship, throughout these 12 weeks, we had multiple meets with people who actually told us about everything. What sort of expectations these people have, how should we approach conversions and stuff. So it was very transparent. And if this is not the case, you should try to approach a manager and see what they expect from you. So having an idea of this whole conversion process is the first step before doing anything.
So you both use the term communication a lot, and as I know as a student, one hindrance to communication is using text generating AI tools or something. So using them in work, is it recommended? And like whenever you said that is it only a search away or something you have to discover something. So using AI tools to find something or anything in your technical domain? Is it recommended, or shall we explore further till like we take out our capacity?
No, see, these are just tools, right? So you should of course know how to use it, and they'll make your life so many times easier. These LLMs. So of course, if these tools are available to you, you should use those. In companies, however, they are still not they have still not integrated these LLMs because there's internal data and they can't expose it to these open source models or even these closed source models. So it's not very accessible at this point, but if these tools are available to you, 100% you should use those. And I'm talking about communication. So communication is like not just so again there are two parts, right? Number one is how you, if you are stuck, how you approach it. So you use all the resources that are available to you. And the communication part, I think that we talked about is basically a general communication to everyone. There should be no discrepancy between what manager expects and what do you think he expects or she expects. Right? So that sort of by continuously talking, even if the manager is not asking you updates, you go ahead and maybe you can also like the work log that I talked about to maintain a doc of everything that you are doing. Just share with your manager from the very beginning, right? So she can just see it whatever you are working on, or even every week you can just go and talk about the things that you have done. So even if let's say the manager is not asking you for the things that you are doing, you basically take ownership of that and be accountable.
The idea of communication here is basically being proactive and communicating your own ideas to the team, so to speak. Right? It's like Gen AI tools aside, just being just actively talking to your manager about really anything. Right? Your manager is ultimately going to be there to help you. So is your mentor. You talk to them about the issues you're having in your project, sure, but you also talk to them about things in general. Right? Basically, don't let things stay as assumptions. If you have an assumption about something and you're not 100% sure if that is correct, right? Be it regarding the requirements of the project, be it regarding who's going to use the project, anything. Just talk to someone about it, figure out what's the actual requirement, and then move ahead with your work. Right? That's what I mean.
So that's the end of the questions, and I hope we ticked all the boxes. I hope all our viewers are satisfied with, and all their questions are cleared. At least mine are, and I hope everyone's all dilemmas are also cleared. So thank you, sir. Thank you for your time, and stay tuned for more such engaging content and insightful sessions with us. Jai Uthaan.